I was hiking the Sierras by myself, doing long days and ending right before the nightfall. I just finished crossing over a mountain pass and was exhausted from hiking all day. I decided to stop for the day and ended up randomly walking off trail for a bit and finding a spot on the ground to set up a camp. Right before it's dark, I see this bearded guy walking through the woods towards me. It caught me off guard because I was in a location where there shouldn't be many other hikers. He said he just got done fishing and asked if he could set his tent next to mine. I couldn't really say no, so I agreed. He started making small talk with me, but something seemed off about him. I decided to get in my bivvy, a small tent, and started to go to sleep. That's when he woke me up. He came over and kneeled down a few inches from me and whispered,
"You know, I think we're gonna die tonight."
I couldn't really believe what he just said. Then he went on.
"You know, it's the blood moon. Jesus is gonna take us home tonight. Both you and me."
At this point, I'm almost shitting my pants. I'm miles from help with no cell phone reception. I then replied with a lame joke to get him to back off. "I hope not. I still have a lot of miles to hike." He then said,
"Well, you sleep tight. By the way, my name's Spirit."
He then went to his tent and closed the door. The rest of the night, I stayed awake. I took a tent stake and held it in my hand. A few times he got out of his tent, looked around, and then went back in. Once I noticed he was asleep, I packed up all my stuff and literally ran down the trail in the pitch dark until I was miles away. I'm writing this the next day, and honestly, I'm still shaken up about it. It was about 2 a.m. and I was leaving a buddy's house after a get-together to catch up. I've done this walk at least a few hundred times, at all hours of the day and late at night, so I was fairly confident of my safety. The walk was short, maybe 25 to 30 minutes, more or less. I was wearing a backpack with random stuff inside of it, so I had a bit of a load. And I was a little stoned considering I smoked a bit before leaving. So I decided to listen to something on YouTube. I wanted to switch things up from listening to music, so I decided to listen to Scary Stories. I loaded up a corpse husband video and put in my headphones. I'm walking and listening, and I shit you not, 2 minutes into the video, I hear a voice behind me.
"Hey you, half and half."
I instantly know he means me because of my hair. I have it split dyed, half black, half blonde. I casually look behind me while I'm walking, and I see who called out to me. There were 3 men following me. All of them were tall, dressed in dark clothes. One of them was holding a pipe or a bat. I couldn't tell.
"Stop walking and drop your bag. We have a gun."
My heart was in my throat. I looked around ahead of me and I saw a police officer amongst a few cars in the 4-way traffic a few dozen yards ahead of us. I silently prayed for it to turn down my road, but it continued forward. I zoned out at the police car and didn't even notice the men getting closer. I heard one of them getting very close and I took off as fast as I could. I ran across the 4-way near the high school and hopped a few fences and ran through backyards. Anything to get as far away as possible. I got a few blocks away and got to the road, only to be greeted by a police officer.
"Get on the ground now."
He had a taser drawn and a flashlight in my eyes. I immediately complied and got to the ground. He asked me why I was running and hopping fences at 2 a.m., and I told him I was trying to get away from people trying to attack me. He paused for a second and said,
"Stand up."
I stood up and he looked at me and said,
"Were you just walking up Miller Street?"
"Yeah, officer, I was. Were you the officer I saw with the cars?" I replied. He nodded and told me he saw the men behind me. I told him my routing, so he understood why I was trespassing so many yards, and he told me I wasn't in trouble, since I was fleeing for safety. The officer had me describe the men as much as possible, and proceeded to radio everything in. Afterwards, he followed me home in his car, never more than 2 blocks away. I got home safe and thanked him. I didn't sleep much that night. Hey, my name's Emily. I'm 23 and I live in Kentucky. I was sort of in between gigs to pay for college, so I decided to work in a gym. I live in a small city, and for context, the gym was in the middle of nowhere, near only an abandoned retirement home and a gas station, plus a few miles from a Target and CVS. Kinda sketch, but pretty modern and safe. In the gym, there's a front desk with a narrow hallway, first floor of men's dressing rooms, treadmills, weights, and third floor is women's dressing rooms, plus everything else. One night, me and my 17-year-old colleague were the only ones left there to close, and there was a bunch of people still working out. We make our announcement about closing in 20 minutes, and people start to leave. There's one guy still on the treadmill with headphones in, so I tap his shoulder to tell him we're closing soon. He smiles and nods and asks what my name is. I tell him my name and smile back. Then his face falls and he tells me,
Well, Emily, if you don't blow me right now, I'm not gonna go anywhere. So fuck off, you little cunt.
I'm in shock, but decide to let him do his thing until we close because I'm scared to say anything else. I go to clean the machines with my colleague and tell him what happened. He suggests we call our supervisor, so I do. And she tells me to just keep the gym open until he leaves, because he probably won't stay for long and we'll get paid for overtime. So we do our thing and everyone except him leaves. So about the guy, he's about 6'4", broad man, black sweatsuit, and honestly not very clean cut. Strongly smells like alcohol and doesn't seem like someone who takes care of themselves. After about 40 minutes, my coworker is cleaning out the dressing rooms and I'm at the front desk when I hear him coming down the stairs. He checks out and stays to chat with me. He apologizes for earlier and tells me he doesn't like when women boss him around, and then asks me for my number. I tell him I have a boyfriend who's picking me up from work, which is a lie, but I didn't want him waiting around the building. He jokes about if he kidnapped me, I would be all his, and he tells me he's killed someone before, for a woman. I'm in shock, and he keeps talking, but I'm frozen. He mentions how he owns me now and is going to watch over me. Then he tells me goodnight and goes down the last stairs to the front door, and I go back in to finish up, basically in tears. This is where I made a mistake. I should have instantly locked the front door, but I didn't. About 30 minutes later, when I'm left alone to close, I head down to the corridor to leave. In the darkness, I see someone crouching behind the desk, but think it may be my coworker, so I call out his name. He doesn't say anything. I get a bit closer, then I smell the very strong sweat and alcohol in the guy from earlier. I get a gut feeling to go upstairs and text my coworker. He tells me he's already left and that I should call the police. While I'm sitting in the locked bathroom, I hear him walk into the women's dressing rooms and call out my name.
Emily.
I wait for a good 20 minutes before the police shows up to arrest him. And turns out he wasn't kidding. He had gunned down a man before. The next day I handed him my 20 days and now I only work in malls after that incident happened. In my late teens and early 20s, I was friends with a girl named Lucy. She was a very lonely kind of girl whose parents were, well, honestly, really shitty parents. Her mother was verbally abusive, and her father really couldn't care less about anything. Because of the lack of love in her life, Lucy searched through dating websites for love and comfort from strange men. And she was not afraid of meeting them face to face, even if they had been chatting for only a few days. My friendship with Lucy was a strange one. I found her quite annoying sometimes, but I also felt awful for her because of her loneliness and lack of friends and love in her life. Sometimes I really didn't want to hang out with her, and some days I would accept her offer to hang out. When it was just her and I together, she was normal and okay to be around, but also very appreciative of having someone giving her attention. And honestly, The whole group together was really quite fun. When we were all together, Lucy was very hyper, and you could just tell that she was happy to be around people who didn't insult her as her mother does. Suddenly, Lucy tells us she has a boyfriend. We were all surprised because we knew she met a lot of guys online, but we never had heard her say she was dating someone. A few days later, she sets up a day for our friend group to meet Trevor. None of us were looking forward to it because we thought he was going to be like all the others, a temporary boy toy. When we met him, we all felt awkward. He barely spoke a word. He wouldn't look directly at any of us, like at all. Lucy would try to be funny, but he would just give her dirty looks. Needless to say, we thought he was a weird one, and could tell he didn't care much for her. As the days went on, Lucy kept telling me how much Trevor did not like me. This was weird because no one ever disliked me. I'm always polite, respectful, and I smile a lot at everyone, but for some reason, he did not like me. She kept saying he thinks I am using Lucy for her money. Not sure how he thought that, since I paid for everything for Lucy. To keep this piece of the story short, I think he was trying to find reasons to convince her to get rid of me. I got a terrible vibe from Trevor. He dressed like he didn't care about life. He never smiled. He didn't shake our hands when we were first meeting. He stank of weed and really had an overall uncomfortable feeling about him. After months of Trevor trying to convince Lucy that I am a terrible friend and she should not hang out with me anymore, she started to do as he said. She would start to hide me from him, and if she and I were together and he would call her on the phone, she would lie and say I wasn't there. He would have her swear I wasn't there. When he was going to be joining the group on an outing or just hanging out at her place, she would tell me I couldn't come. Lucy will do whatever a boyfriend says just to keep pleasing him, so she doesn't lose them. And here's where it starts to get scary. Lucy calls me one day and says she wants me to come hang out at her place. I agreed. She came to pick me up and we went to her house and watched TV for a bit. We then decided it's a nice day outside and we would take her two dogs for a walk to a nearby pocket park and would later return to the house to have lunch together. While at this park, she receives a phone call. Now, let me say that Lucy is not a private person whatsoever and has never ever walked away to answer a phone call until this day. She walked far enough away that she knew I would not be able to hear anything she said. This was suspicious to me, but not enough to question it. The call ends and she begins walking towards me with a look on her face, as if she's trying not to smile. She tells me,
"So, I need to bring you home now."
I was slightly confused as we had only been together for about an hour, when we usually spend the entire day together, and she would never want me to go home. She would even frequently beg me to sleep over to avoid being alone. So anyway, I said okay, and we walked to drop her dogs off at home. And we got into her car and off we went. About 10 minutes into the car ride, I realized she isn't going in the direction of my house, so I questioned it. Where are we going?" She smirked, but didn't respond. I asked again, laughing uncomfortably. "Seriously, where are we going?" She continued to smirk, but didn't want to answer me. I started to realize she was heading in the direction of where her boyfriend lived. Oh, hell no. I asked one last time with anger in my voice, "Where are you taking me?" Her only response was bone-chilling to me.
"Trevor wants to talk to you."
Nope. Nope. I wasn't having any of this. I insisted and demanded she let me out of the car. But with her evil smirk and same response, she said it again.
"It's okay. He just wants to talk to you."
I was furious at this point, because this creepy guy who looks like he wants to kill someone, who also despised me, wanted to talk to me? Why can't he talk to me on the phone? Why do I need to go to a sketchy apartment? She absolutely refused to let me out of the car. She had the doors locked. as if I wasn't able to unlock my passenger door. I waited until she reached a red light. I grabbed her wallet from the back seat and took her bus pass and bolted out of the car. I had no idea where I was or where the nearest bus stop was, but I was not about to let her crazy-ass boyfriend do whatever he wanted to me. She yelled for me to get back into the car, but of course, I ignored her. She sped off furiously. I immediately blocked her number on my phone. I removed her as a friend on my social media, and immediately warned the group of friends not to talk to her because she has gone nuts. I have not spoken to her since that day, and she also lost the other 5 friends of the group as well. After this situation, Lucy, I hope you're truly alone now. Hey everyone. I want to thank all the authors for letting me read their stories. I'm glad that all the endings had good outcomes. And I also want to explain where I've been for 6 months. Life gets in the way and, you gotta move, and your equipment that you had back then wasn't too great. I mean, it got the job done, but still. I'm doing better with my equipment. I now have a space where I can record, and I'll be doing a new story, a creepypasta. Gonna be working on it and hopefully gonna get it out by next Monday. I'll also have Spirit Voices helping me out with that. You probably know her. She's done a lot of stuff. She has her own channel. She worked with Dark Somnium, which is a fantastic narrator, and so is she, and it is just an honor to be working with her on this next story, and I can't wait to get it done and show it to you guys. So stick around. Thanks, guys. See ya.